Hi, it's Katrina. Imagine building a massive religious monument, a structure of towering, intricately carved stone pillars that took generations to complete. A structure so important that it actually changed the course of human history. Now imagine deliberately burying the entire thing. That is the mystery of Göbekli Tepe, the oldest temple on Earth. Built 11,000 years ago by hunter-gatherers who shouldn't have been able to build anything, this site is actively forcing scientists to rewrite the timeline of human development. New excavations are revealing why these primitive people were building perfect geometric triangles and religious art. But the biggest question remains: why did the builders themselves conspire to erase the world's first great sanctuary? Today we are diving into the secrets they tried to keep buried. New finds at humanity's first temple. On a dry, unassuming hilltop in southeastern Turkey, long before the pyramids rose from Giza's sands or Stonehenge cast its shadows on Salisbury Plain, something extraordinary happened. Hunter-gatherers, those supposedly simple nomads with nothing but flint and fire and maybe fleas, hauled multi-ton limestone pillars onto a rocky hill. Then they carved them, decorated them with animals and abstract symbols, and arranged the stones in circles. Why did they do this? Nobody alive today knows, but the experts have endless guesses, most of which have to do with rituals and mythology. This is Göbekli Tepe, the world's first known temple built some 11,000 years ago. And if historians are to be believed, that was before pottery, before writing, and before the invention of the wheel, which means a massive megalithic site was constructed by hunters and gatherers before they could even leave thank you notes. The name of the site means potbelly hill in Turkish, which feels appropriate for a place that bulges with symbolism. Over the past few years, Göbekli Tepe has upended all of our assumptions about prehistory and made scientists rethink the development of civilization on Earth. And the discoveries are still rolling in. But before dissecting the new stuff, let's quickly go back to when the site was originally discovered in the 1960s. At the time, it was dismissed as a Byzantine cemetery. The stone fragments sticking up from the earth were ignored like a bad sequel. That is, until 1994, when a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt took a second look. Schmidt, part detective and part heretic, noticed the oddly T-shaped stone stumps and guessed that this wasn't a graveyard. It was his opinion that the site was a Neolithic complex built for some sort of ancient religious purposes. Excavations began in earnest in 1995, and what emerged was an archaeological treasure trove combined with a paradigm-shattering, history-breaking, civilization-redefining revelation. These hunter-gatherers had not only created monumental architecture, but had done so without agriculture, cities, or metallurgy. They had created this place almost certainly to be a religious sanctuary, which would mean that civilization didn't cause the creation of religion. It was the other way around. Prehistoric religion may have pushed humans into forming societies. And that would mean, technically, religion and spirituality is what started civilization. The central enclosures at Göbekli Tepe are crowned with pillars up to 18 feet tall, weighing as much as 50 tons. Let's just pause here to consider the implications. Even the Egyptians, thousands of years later, could hardly move stones that big, and they had cranes, ships, labor unions, and hydraulic contraptions. The people of Göbekli Tepe had none of those things, but that didn't stop them from shaping rocks into man-made pillars. Many of the pillars are adorned with relief carvings of lions, snakes, foxes, wild boars, vultures, and headless humans. Interpreting these symbols has proved extremely difficult. Headless humans are reminiscent of the Aztecs and their obsession with decapitation. The prevalence of animals reminds you of the Egyptians and their anthropomorphic pantheon of gods. Either way, the images clearly show that these humans were smart. They understood the natural world, and they were starting, perhaps in their mythology, to blur the line between nature and myth. And these weren't just scattered monoliths erected at the site without rhyme or reason. There was a method to the madness here. In 2020, archaeologist Gil Hackley and researcher Avi Gopher used architectural analysis and computer modeling to reveal that the enclosures were built with deliberate geometric planning. 3 key enclosures, it turns out, form an almost perfect equilateral triangle. Can we just take a moment to appreciate that? Someone in 9600 BC understood how to create equilateral triangles using nothing but rope, intuition, and grit. I don't think I could do that without a calculator especially, yet so-called primitive humans could pull it off with nothing but their own brain. For now, you need to know that Göbekli Tepe has been interpreted as a purely ceremonial site for years. Experts have believed it to be a pilgrimage center where scattered nomadic groups came to perform rituals before wandering off into the wilderness. The idea was that they would meet up here once a year or once every 7 years or whatever for some grand celebration. And the rest of the time, they were just wandering around, picking berries, hunting deer, crafting mammoth rugs, the usual. Nowadays, things are changing. Göbekli Tepe may have been a ceremonial site, but new excavations are adding nuance and complexity to the story. Researchers have uncovered living quarters, storage spaces, tools, and grinding stones, all of which suggest the builders didn't just pray here, they lived here. Flint sickles and small mills hint at early cereal processing, and botanical remains show evidence of plant and animal consumption, possibly pointing to proto-agricultural practices. The line between forager and farmer, it turns out, is fuzzier than we thought. The evidence points to Göbekli Tepe being the very earliest site of human sedentarism, meaning the first place that humans sat down and put up their feet to relax. The new idea is that humans built a monument to some shared god and then realized they needed to upkeep the monument and the site, which led, maybe accidentally, to the development of farming, trade, and civilization. All just to make sure the first temple ever built didn't fall over. Make no mistake though, these people weren't simple and neither was their religion. It was all very complex. The site is covered in sculptures, some animals, some human, some unclear. One pillar shows a headless figure with a prominent phallus, showing off like it just figured out it's there. Another reveals a crouching predator, and over there a vulture with wings of death. The carvings may not come with subtitles, but they certainly feel like a mythological storyboard. Between the lines, you can sense myths and stories of creation, chaos, rebirth, and transformation. The presence of such rich symbolic art from such an early date suggests that religion and storytelling were already prevalent in the earliest human societies. It's pretty clear that whoever made Göbekli Tepe was already religious. So how far back does it go? Did Homo sapiens inherit the religion of the Neanderthals? And did they inherit their beliefs from an older human, like Homo erectus? There's just no way of knowing. But progress is being made. Those grinding mills and flint sickles are all new discoveries. Archaeologists are still working right now to uncover the truth of the site and dig up as many artifacts as they can. But it is slow. To date, only about 10% of Göbekli Tepe has been excavated. Archaeologists estimate at least 15 more enclosures still lie buried beneath the hill, possibly even older than the current structures. Some may date as far back as 13,000 BC. Excavating them all may take another, believe it or not, 150 years. And even then, archaeologists might still not have a solid grasp on the story of human history. I've saved my favorite little factoid about Göbekli Tepe for last. As if it all weren't confusing enough already, Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried. Someone buried the entire complex around the year 8000 BC. Someone, possibly the very people who built it, filled in the enclosures with debris, hiding them from view for millennia. But why? Was it ritual closure, climate change, a cultural shift? It's one of those crazy things that nobody knows. First, you've got to deal with a prehistoric civilization building their own community sanctuary temple complex. And then you've got to come to terms with the fact that they buried it on purpose. Today, this place reminds us that the past is not linear and that intelligence, creativity, and spiritual yearning did not arrive with bronze swords and wheeled carts. Göbekli Tepe is not just the world's first known temple. It is the world's first great monument to the human imagination. And we are still trying to catch up. The stone that grew a face. Now that you are extremely impressed by Göbekli Tepe, it's time to introduce you to its neighbor and lesser-known sibling, Karahan Tepe. Lesser known, but not any less important. And now, for the first time in recorded archaeological history, a T-shaped stele with a human face has been unearthed at Karahan Tepe, the enigmatic site nestled in Turkey's southeastern Sanliurfa province, not far from Göbekli Tepe. With deep eye sockets, a bold, broad nose, and sharply contoured features, Karahan Tepe's mysterious new statue stares across 12,000 years of human time. It might be even older than similar stelae found at Göbekli Tepe. Regardless of its age, Karahan Tepe's new stone face is at the center of a very interesting mystery. It's carved on a T-shaped stele, of which there are many spread across the site and across Göbekli Tepe. For years, scientists have come up with all kinds of explanations for what the T-shaped stelae are supposed to be. Now, scientists think they know. The face makes it very clear that these T-shaped megaliths were not merely stylized markers or random pillars. Oh no, they were meant to be depictions of humans. The T-shaped pillars here may be the earliest known portraits of the human form, sort of like the first attempt at a David. They're a little crude and a little rough, but they do seem to be humanity's first attempt at making human statues, and that is worth investigating. Karahan Tepe has always lived in the longer shadow of Göbekli Tepe, its older and more famous cousin, but they shouldn't be in competition at all. The two sites are linked like twins, together forming a web of stone, myth, and ritual. As more and more discoveries are made, scientists become more convinced the whole area was swarming with early, civilized humans. The excavation zone around Karahan Tepe alone covers nearly 20,000 square feet. Here, archaeologists have found anthropomorphic statues with realistic expressions, engraved benches, reliefs of animals, and now this, a stele that stares back. These are not just icons, they are identities. The carving style matches other human figures at the site, implying a consistent artistic language. It also suggests that these weren't one-off experiments in creativity. They were part of a cultural plan, a sort of shared understanding of what it meant to be human in a world not yet ruled by cities, kings, or algorithms. You've got to wonder who the faces were based on. Was it the earliest version of a king, a shaman, a god? Some suspect they may have been gods. T-shaped pillars have long been central to the mystery of the pre-pottery Neolithic cultures, since they show up a lot. Some of them display arms bent at the elbows, hands resting on bellies as if caught mid-ritual, and others are blank, blooming silhouettes. But no one has ever agreed on whether they represent people, rulers, gods, or spirits. It's a mystery that goes beyond Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe to the whole Neolithic world, because whatever started in these hills, if it really was the true beginning of civilization, it evolved and spread like wildfire across the globe. Even right now, work is continuing across no less than 10 sites in the province alone, part of a massive initiative to peel back the layers of humanity's first spiritual awakenings. The goal isn't just to dig up artifacts, it's to reconstruct the architecture of belief and map how early societies evolved. This is our story, guys! These stone statues are clues to our origins. Please feel free to add your thoughts and theories in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Ancient skull rewrites human evolution. When the Chinese research team uncovered the Yunxian tooth skull in Hubei province, they assumed it was another member of the old guard, meaning Homo erectus. Scientists thought they had found just another skull of our globe-trotting ancestor with just enough brain power to use fire and get confused by reflections. After all, the fossil was 1 million years old. And according to every scientific textbook, 1 million years ago was a time when Homo erectus ruled supreme, and there were no Homo sapiens. We, as a species, didn't exist yet. So imagine everyone's surprise when the 1 million-year-old Homo erectus skull turned out to be a little more human. Yeah, they freaked out. When scientists first realized the skull had a large brain case, distinctive facial contours, and big modern eye sockets, they were confused. These were traits that shouldn't have shown up until at least 500,000 years later. Naturally, the team ran the skull through every possible test: shape analysis, comparative anatomy, and digital reconstruction, just to name a few. They even 3D printed a corrected version using computer modeling to uncrush the million-year-old cranium. What they found shocked everyone. According to Professor Shijun Ni of Fudan University and Professor Chris Stringer of London's Natural History Museum, Yunxian 2 is not from Homo erectus. The skull appears to belong to an early representative of Homo longi, a human species very few are familiar with. But after this, you'll have a hard time forgetting. Homo longi was a sister species to Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. Like us, they were large-brained, sit upright, and face forward in both the anatomical and metaphorical sense. Homo longi was so close to us that if it was walking the earth 1,000,000 years ago, maybe we were too. And if we were, that changes history in a very real way. This isn't just changing the date of an invasion by 4 years or the invention of the wheel by 3 decades. This is giving Homo sapiens an extra 500,000 years on the planet. It is huge news by every metric. The new analysis, published in the most scientifically named journal ever, the journal Science, pushes our emergence on the human family tree to 1,000,000 years ago, and it implies that everyone from Homo sapiens to Neanderthals to Homo longi were hanging out at the same time, possibly even interbreeding for a full 800,000 years. I hope it's true because it would make certain things a lot easier to understand. For example, scientists have wrestled with a frustrating fossil conundrum for decades. They keep finding dozens of human remains dated from between 800,000 and 100,000 years ago. But these remains never quite fit into any specific box. They are often too advanced to be erectus, too primitive to be sapiens, or too weird to be defined. This awkward evolutionary puberty phase was dubbed the muddle in the middle by researchers who just couldn't make sense of it. But now, with the Yunxian 2 skull, everything is different. The skull is evidence that the 3 major lineages of modern humans were already around 1,000,000 years ago. And so all of those hard-to-place fossils are simply the cousins, hybrids, and subgroups of the big 3. Though if I'm being honest, it's almost made things more complicated. Now, there are even more species to think about and an even longer timeline to consider. Could it really have taken Homo sapiens 1,000,000 years to become civilized? To be fair, not everyone's ready to rewrite the textbooks just yet. Dr. Alwyn Scally, evolutionary geneticist at Cambridge, warns that dating ancient human divergence is notoriously difficult, and that even the best genetic estimates come with a margin of error the size of a geological epoch. There is still a lot we don't understand, he told the BBC. Even with the best data, we might be off by 100,000 years or more. So while the conclusions are plausible, they are far from certain. That's the thing about theories. They're just theories. That being said, this is more than your typical fringe theory. The skull was reanalyzed with cutting-edge digital restoration, reclassified after peer review, and supported by multiple lines of evidence, including morphology, genetics, and good old-fashioned disbelief. Yunxian 2 isn't just a fossil, it's a time traveler with a message, saying that our species is older, messier, and more interconnected than anyone imagined. It tells us that the blueprint for humanity, big brains, forward-facing vision, symbolic thought, was written long before we learned to write anything down. Somewhere out there in a forgotten field or dusty drawer or the shadow of a cave, another 1,000,000-year-old secret waits to be unearthed. Update on the oldest pyramid on the planet. In the official Gospel of Guinness World Records, the world's oldest known pyramid is Egypt's Djoser Step Pyramid, dated to around 2,630 BC. It is a 6-tiered limestone marvel that signaled the dawn of monumentality in human civilization. That all changed in October 2023, when a headline-grabbing study lobbed a hand grenade into the archaeological status quo. A team led by Danny Hillman of the Indonesian Institute of Sciences published a bombshell paper in the journal Archaeological Prospection. The paper argued that Gunung Padang, a megalithic site in West Java, Indonesia, looks like a boring hill but is actually a man-made pyramid dating back to 25,000 BC. Yes, 25,000. If the claim is true, it would make Gunung Padang not just older than Egypt's pyramids, but nearly 20,000 years older. It would predate agriculture. It would even predate Turkey's tepes by over 10,000 years. It would also mean a Paleolithic society, still in the Stone Age, had advanced masonry capabilities and a knack for architectural geometry. And why wouldn't they, thousands of years before farming, writing, or domesticated goats?
In the paper, the authors described massive layers of sculpted andesite lava, intentional terracing, and underground chambers. They even likened the site to Göbekli Tepe because if you're going on that big of a limb, you need some familiar names to prop you up. The researchers implied that human civilization may have started at Gunung Padang instead of in Turkey. The only problem for Danny was that no one really believed him. Within weeks of the announcement, academic backlash poured in like hot lava. The paper was shredded by experts who accused it of methodological cherry-picking, interpretive overreach, and basic geological confusion. So, in essence, they got the ancient aliens treatment. Dr. Flint Dibble of Cardiff University called the evidence for human involvement non-existent. He mocked the reasoning by saying it was like dating the soil beneath the Eiffel Tower and concluding that the tower itself is 20,000 years old. When you look at it that way, it does kind of make sense. Could Danny have been trying to mislead everyone? Dr. Bill Farley from Southern Connecticut State University pointed out that the soil samples, although accurately radiocarbon dated, contained no charcoal, bone, or cultural material. And if there were humans at the site, those things should have been present in the sample. In other words, the researchers had dated the dirt, not the pyramid. One of the most recent updates was near the end of last year, when the journal officially retracted the study, citing a major error. Do you know how badly you need to botch a study to have it removed from a paper for a major error? Let's just say bad enough that they probably didn't get much for Christmas that year. The authors had based their conclusions on soil samples not associated with any artifacts or man-made features. In the world of archaeology, that's the equivalent of carbon dating an empty grave and claiming to have discovered Atlantis. It just makes no sense. But Danny did not go down quietly. In fact, he raged. He called the retraction a severe form of censorship, accused the journal of academic gatekeeping, and published a scathing Facebook post titled "The Unjust Retraction of Groundbreaking Research." The debate exploded online, with some defending the spirit of exploration, and others reminding everyone that science without evidence is just storytelling with lab coats. And now I'm curious, where do you stand on the issue? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Still, one thing is certain, Gunung Padang will not go quietly into the academic night. While the original paper lies in tatters, new fieldwork continues at Gunung Padang and is still whispering secrets from beneath the soil. In 2025, this year, a fresh team of Indonesian researchers led by Ali Akbar returned to the site and unearthed several tantalizing features. They found elongated pentagonal rocks believed to originate from nearby volcanic mountains. It's hard to tell if they're man-made, but the terraced formations discovered nestled beside the main staircase sure look to be man-made. They also uncovered 4 upright support stones embedded deep underground, possibly forming the skeletal supports of a massive, still hidden chamber. And they revealed subsurface structures dozens of feet below the main terrace, using LiDAR and ground-penetrating radar. Look, everything points to artificial creation. The volcanic stones, the staircase, the support stones, they all look like human architecture. The scans even revealed that the alleged pyramid is sitting on top of something significantly bigger. The new researchers emphasize caution, saying they don't know what they found, but whatever it is, it's intriguing. And honestly, that's kind of the way you're supposed to do it. You don't just announce that you've discovered Atlantis and have everyone laugh at you. You say, hey, we found something strange and we need more information. And then you relay your own discoveries and let Graham Hancock turn it into aliens in his next Netflix special. The new researchers have simply suggested that Gunung Padang may be far larger, more complex, and more layered than previously understood. They're saying it's a site worth re-examining on its own terms, even without the Ice Age timeline and antediluvian dreams. So what is Gunung Padang? A pyramid older than time, built by forgotten Ice Age engineers? A natural lava hill misread through the lens of wishful thinking? Or something in between? In a world still buzzing from the revelations of Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe, Gunung Padang stands as another enigma from the forefront of human evolution. If humans were building temples in Turkey 11,000 years ago, why couldn't they have built pyramids in Indonesia 10,000 years earlier? Let's see if Ali Akbar and maybe Graham Hancock will be able to shed some more light on this mystery in the future. The oldest mummies are not from Egypt. All day I've been giving you glimpses into the prehistoric world of our ancestors, trying to understand human origins. Well, now the story just got weirder. It turns out humans may have started preserving their dead, like the wrapped up sandwiches your mom puts in your lunchbox, a lot earlier than anyone thought. Here's the scoop on mummies. Egypt has the most famous mummies, but not the oldest. The oldest mummies ever found have been recovered from the coast of Chile, predating Egypt's mummies by thousands of years. Now, something has changed. From the humid forests of Southeast Asia, just a hop, skip, and a monkey-guided walk through the jungle from Gunung Padang, even older mummies have been found. It's now looking like prehistoric hunter-gatherers were mummifying their dead up to 12,000 years ago, which is saying something because their only technology was fire and a pointy stick. Maybe. A new study published in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences has revealed human remains from China, Vietnam, Laos, and neighboring regions that appear to have been intentionally smoke-dried. I told you their only tech was fire. Smoke drying a human body was a primitive but startlingly effective form of mummification, and scientists think it may predate all other types. If confirmed, it pushes the history of deliberate body preservation back by 5,000 years, making these the oldest human mummies ever found. It also opens up room for new questions, like what inspired these people to start mummifying their dead? Why has humanity been so obsessed with mummies for so long? To be fair, these are not the mummies you're used to seeing. They don't come with elaborate sarcophagi, and they aren't like the desiccated remains of the Atacama Desert's Chinchorro people. The bodies found in Asia weren't even honored with monuments or fancy golden funeral masks. They were forced into a crouching position, scorched, and smoked over a fire like sacred jerky until they looked pretty crispy. While no one can say for sure why they did it, scholars have some ideas. They think it was a way for people to remember their ancestors, possibly even being one of the earliest forms of ancestor worship practiced by human beings. The mummies were discovered in various archaeological sites across Guangxi, China, and parts of Vietnam, the Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. The sheer distance between some of the mummies is intense, and it kind of makes me wonder if they weren't part of a cohesive civilization. I mean, mummies from China to the Philippines? That can't be a coincidence. Some were found buried in squatted or fetal positions, while others bore burn marks and intentional cuts. When scientists examined the bones more closely, they found evidence of heat exposure consistent with deliberate smoke drying, which means this wasn't accidental. This is a clear-cut example of funerary tradition practiced by communities. It just so happens the communities didn't have pottery, metal tools, or permanent homes. These are all nice things to have, but not necessary to make mummies. What these ancient humans had was the emotional capacity to miss their dead, and I can't think of anything more human than that. Hirofumi Matsumura of Sapporo Medical University, one of the lead authors of the study, said smoke drying allowed people to sustain physical and spiritual connections with their ancestors. So maybe they had a bunch of mummies decorating their village. It's worth mentioning that until now, the oldest known mummies were those of the Chinchorro people in modern-day Chile and Peru, dating back roughly 7,000 years. So about 5,000 years after the Southeast Asian mummies. Unlike our smoke-dried friends, the Chinchorro actually had real embalming techniques. They decorated the remains of their dearly departed so spectacularly that they are considered the Neolithic gold standard for prehistoric funerary practice. It's also worth noting that they represent a completely different worldview. Not all mummies are made for the same reason, and the distinction between them is important. The Chinchorro mummified their dead to make them beautiful. The Egyptians did it to prepare them for the afterlife. But the hunter-gatherers of ancient Asia did it to keep their dead close. They made mummies to create ancestors who weren't absent but present in their everyday lives. They wanted their friends sitting by the fire with them, not stuffed in some creepy tomb. Did you know that on the island of Sulawesi in Indonesia right now, people are still mummifying their ancestors and keeping them around? I can't tell you if the practice has been passed down generation after generation for the last 12,000 years, but I will say Indonesia is one of the only places left where people still mummify their friends and keep them around. It seems like a bit more than just a coincidence. The ancient manene ritual involves people dancing with mummies. When someone dies, they are typically mummified and then kept in the family home for between 2 and 3 years. Then, when enough time has passed, the funeral is held with mummy daughter dances, a buffalo is sacrificed, and the mummy is then sealed in the family grave, which is carved into a cliff. This is something happening now in 2025, and something similar was happening 12,000 years ago in the exact same region. This discovery doesn't just rewrite the global history of mummification, it rewrites what we think prehistoric people were capable of feeling. They weren't just unfeeling savages, they were innovators of intimacy, using heat and ritual to defy decomposition and refusing to let nature dissolve memory. Their methods were humble, but their goal was epic. All they really wanted was to remember, to keep the dead nearby, and to ensure that death was not the end. And in a way, those ancient mummies did exactly what their creators hoped. The mummies are still with us. We may not know their names, but they aren't forgotten anymore. 12,000 years later, and here we are talking about them on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Do you think mummification will ever make a comeback? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on more awesome history. See you later. Bye.